Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the International Cannabis Policy Conference in Vienna. My name is Paul von Hartmann. I'm a cannabis scholar and filmmaker. I also wrote a book entitled Cannabis versus Climate Change, which is available on Amazon, and there is a film on Vimeo by the same title that explains the environmental services that cannabis offers that are currently almost universally unregarded. The value of these environmental services is such that if we couldn't make a single thing out of cannabis, we would still need to grow as much cannabis as we can, as fast as we can, in every soil and climate condition to which it may be able to adapt, and pray it's not too late. The oxygen production, carbon sequestration, and atmospheric terpene production potential for cannabis is of enormous significance because of the increasing environmental consequences of having half the terpenes in the atmosphere, half the oxygen in the atmosphere, and far too much carbon, over 400 parts per million in the atmosphere. So cannabis offers a way to mitigate all of the imbalances that have been imposed on Earth's atmosphere through the organic cultivation of a crop that produces both complete nutrition and sustainable energy from the same harvest. Cannabis is unique in this, and that's another reason why it's so important for us to reconsider its value as not being illegal, but in fact being essential to mankind's sustainable existence on this planet. Cannabis is unique in its ability to produce vast amounts of atmospheric terpenes, the fragrance that we smell from things such as pine trees and basil and rosemary and other aromatic herbs. Well, cannabis produces a vast quantity of terpenes, and because of the potential to replenish the atmosphere with terpenes that have been lost, cannabis is unique in consideration for this particular environmental service. Historically, terpenes were produced by the world's boreal forests and the marine phytoplankton, but in the last 60 to 100 years, we have depleted the populations of phytoplankton and forests by exploitation and degradation of the environment. Cannabis offers mankind the opportunity to replenish the atmosphere with terpenes that refract solar radiation away from the planet and also serve as cloud condensation nuclei. The role of atmospheric terpenes is still being studied and is largely overlooked in relation to the warming of the planet, which is the effect, one of the effects of the increasing UVB radiation making it through the atmosphere to the surface of the planet. The reason that's happening is because the concentration of terpenes in the atmosphere has been reduced. Now, what terpenes do is that they physically refract solar radiation. They act like little liquid crystals in the atmosphere to reflect solar radiation away from the planet. They also serve as cloud condensation nuclei that form bright and persistent clouds. Now, these cloud condensation nuclei, these terpenes, don't photodegrade in sunlight. They are rained from the sky and become part of the hydrologic cycle, which it's important to understand that the terpenes have well-documented antifungal, antiviral, and antibiotic properties. So if we have half the terpenes in the atmosphere as we had 100 years ago, then we have half of the antibiotic and antiviral, antifungal effect that may participate in purification of the hydrologic cycle. So these are the things that I introduced in my book. These are theories that occurred to me as I studied cannabis, and based in a knowledge of the life sciences and ecology. But it's important to understand that there is an inertial resistance to this information because of the drug war and because of the prohibition of a crop that before we were born was identified as a menace to society rather than a benefit. Now, we all were born into this misvaluation of the crop, but it doesn't mean we have to live with it. It doesn't mean we should continue to look at cannabis this way. In fact, cannabis is unique and essential for several reasons. I've talked about the terpene production, the oxygen production, carbon sequestration potential for cannabis is another environmental service that needs to be considered. 9 tons per acre per growing season is one of the estimates that I've gotten from credible sources. And the other services that cannabis provides in terms of stopping soil erosion from wind and water, and providing a seasonal windbreak, and providing cover and feed for wildlife populations, remineralization of depleted soils, phytoremediation of contaminated soils. All of these environmental services need to be given a value so that the inertia from prohibition can be overcome, and the economics of cannabis can be allowed to compete in a truly free market economy on a level playing field with fossil fuels and nuclear energy and other types of industries that are actually gaiacidal to this planet. And if we look at the Gaia therapeutic potential for cannabis, it puts cannabis in a unique category of agricultural resources that has the potential to solve many problems at once. Consider, for example, that cannabis is the only crop that's capable of producing complete nutrition and sustainable energy from the same harvest. This is a huge thing to realize, because what that means is that by growing our own energy in cannabis, we're not inducing food insecurity and malnutrition. It's the only crop that you can say that about. Every other energy crop takes the place of a food crop, whereas cannabis can serve as both a food crop and an energy crop at the same time. This is critical to disengaging from the other types of energy that we currently base our entire economic system in. So to make the pivotal polar shift in values from cannabis is illegal to cannabis is essential becomes the objective that will determine our success or failure in healing this planet. One of the things that is important to understand about cannabis terpenes is the potential for use in protecting other crops. Cannabis terpenes have pesticidal effect that is non-toxic to people and to animals. And another of the reasons why cannabis needs to be grown in quantity so that these commodities can be produced to improve agriculture in other areas and to provide farmers with the tools that they need from their own farms to where they're not dependent on external inputs to survive, to thrive. And so it's important to look at all of the different reasons that cannabis is both unique and essential, and to implement strategies for making it available to farmers in every corner of the world where it may be able to adapt. The increasing UVB radiation that has resulted from the depletion of the ozone layer and reduced concentrations of terpenes in the atmosphere is a danger on several fronts. First of all, increased UVB radiation suppresses immune response. It causes genetic mutation. It causes abnormal cell division. It increases the solubility of mercury, arsenic, and selenium compounds, which is very concerning to the health of this planet. So all of these things, in addition to the reduced harvests as a result of the UVB and other effects of imbalance that are related to UVB radiation, the health of amphibious populations, for example, or the ability for phytoplankton to reproduce under conditions of elevated UVB. All of these things are connected, and the real concern is that we will fail to act in a timely way. Time is the limiting factor in the equation of survival. We don't know how much time we have left in order to act effectively, to make a difference. Future generations will either benefit or suffer for what we do today. And I think it's important to accept that responsibility and to do what's necessary in order to achieve a positive result. I trust that something I've said here today will help in your decision-making process and your assessment of cannabis. I thank you for the opportunity to present these ideas and encourage you to consider what I've written and presented in my film, Cannabis versus Climate Change, in order to achieve our highest potential in healing this planet. Thank you so much.